Hello, faithful, and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion anywhere, plus no hot takes, just logical, balanced, intelligent 49er discussion. And today we're going to be taking a look at areas of concern on the defense, specifically what's come up a lot on social media, cornerback and safety. We're going to discuss if the Niners need to make a move there. And the second part of the podcast, I'm going to be giving my 53-man roster prediction, or at least around half of that, looking at the offense and who should make the Week 1 opening roster as of today, which is early in July. So let's get right into it. If you've been following 49er Twitter or other social media platforms or media talking heads, you've probably heard for the past couple months how two positions on defense could need some reinforcement. Now, the Niners roster isn't perfect. They could basically use reinforcements anywhere, as could any roster in the NFL. Like I said, no roster is perfect, and every GM, every coach, every owner is looking to upgrade rosters where it makes sense, both from a positional standpoint, looking at who they have on the roster, balancing younger rookie players that they want to get some run versus bringing in a more experienced veteran. And of course, the cost that's going to be associated with that, not just for the player, but at least to me, for the position as well. And cornerback has come up a lot recently, and I understand the reason why. Because outside of Demo and Renardo Green, I think the only other two corners that have really good shots to make the roster are Trey Brown, who the Niners signed away from Seattle, can play inside or outside, and rookie Upton Stout, who is penciled in right now as potentially the slot corner, unless Trey Brown wins the outside cornerback spot opposite of Renardo Green, and Demo stays in the slot. And that's something, when he was asked about it, he put up a really high slot coverage grade per Pro Football Focus the past couple of years, in the top 2 or 3. And he was asked, if he would like to move outside. And it was basically, he said, whatever Robert Saleh wants, it's totally fine. It's like, but I like being inside. You're closer to the linebackers. You hear the communication better. And slot corner is such a big position on the field, with receiver teams going 3 wide, 4 wide more often. And he likes the challenge of not having the boundary, not having out of bounds as an extra defender. Demo's a dog. He's up for that type of challenge. He got paid for his versatility. I mean, when you look at his snaps, he was probably taking more snaps throughout the course of a season at nickelback than he was at outside corner. But there are some players that can only play nickelback, like Upton Stout's going to be one of them, mainly due to size, although Demo's not much bigger, only an inch or two bigger. And there are some corners that are more boundary corners, especially when you're getting into someone that's like a 6'1", 6'2" type of corner. Charvarius Ward, now with the Colts, formerly the Niners, has that body type. But some that were mentioned that the Niners could and should take a look at just to do their due diligence. Let's start off with Asante Samuel. Had a really good start to his career with the Chargers. Then the injury bug hit last year, missed 13 games due to neck surgery, which he had either had it in April or he was cleared in April. I think he was cleared in April. And teams are just still waiting to see how everything's going to shake out. Now, he was coming off of his rookie deal, so his average annual value up to this point was only a couple $1 million, as I think, a second or third round draft pick. But he's someone that you could, I don't want to say pencil in, just if he's completely healthy. And neck injuries, very tricky. It's not the most supported muscle-wise part of the body. And with players still leading with their head and it just being such a violent game, that's something that I'm sure teams are going to want to be judicious and really think about. And if anything, he's probably only going to get a 1-year deal, because I can't see any team right off the bat making a significant financial commitment. Hell, the Chargers saw what he did for 3 of the 4 years he was under contract, and Jim Harbaugh just completely went another way. Drafted 2 corners, or at least 1 corner, and had a younger corner come in, and just did not decide to re-sign Asante Samuel. So he's out there. How much longer he'll be out there, who knows? But definitely an option. Now, Mike Hilton, formerly of the Bengals, was brought up as well. Really good slot cornerback. His previous average annual value was about $6 million. Spotrac.com has him estimated as getting more than that in free agency. Well, if that was the case, he would have gotten paid already, at least in my opinion. 4 interceptions the last 4 years with the Bengals. And in those 4 years, he's played at least 14 games. 30 years old or thereabouts. Durability, past durability is no predictor for future health, but a bit different feeling with someone like a Mike Hilton versus someone like an Asante Samuel coming off of the neck injury. Hilton would be primarily an inside guy. Can he play outside? Sure. But his move to mainly inside would push Demo outside. And then I think, if the 3 right now to me are Demo Green and Trey Brown, do you feel better with Demo Green and Asante Samuel? If someone can guarantee you Asante Samuel is going to be completely healthy, probably. Do you feel better with Demo Green and Mike Hilton bumping Trey Brown to the bench? Possibly. Next player, Rasul Douglas, formerly of the Packers and Buffalo Bills. Previous average annual value was about $7 million. Again, Spotrac thinks he's going to get more than that. 9 interceptions the last 3 years. In the last 3 years with those 2 teams, he's played at least 15 games. Bigger corner, 6'2", but he's played in the slot a bit as well. So I think he has a little bit more inside-outside flexibility than Hilton does. Asante Samuel, more of a boundary corner. And I'm going to give now 2 players that you could really say you could take a flyer on, just based on the cost. And if Asante Samuel's market doesn't develop in the next month, you could say you could take a flyer on him as well. But I'm sure if they're going to bring somebody in, they're going to want to bring them in for close to, if not the entirety of training camp, right? It just makes sense getting acclimated to the system that Robert Saleh wants to run. First flyer, Caleb Farley. So he, formerly of the Titans, or at least that's the team who drafted him, and he was with Carolina last year. 4 years in the league. He missed all of 2023 to a back injury. Played 9 games in 2024 with Carolina. No interceptions, no real statistics to note, but a first-round talent going into his 5th year in the league. And he's a year away from that back injury. Now, basically any parts of the body are tricky. Backs, things that can flare up, necks, not the most supported of areas. So those are 2 players between Asante Samuel and Caleb Farley that there are medical question marks with. You could get Farley for around the same as what he made last year, $1 million with Carolina. That would be a flyer. Low risk. Moderate to high risk, moderate floor. But for the money, you're not talking about, Caleb Farley for $1 million versus Asante Samuel for maybe 6 or 7. If that's what he gets, cost benefit, ratio and evaluations that teams need to make. And the last one I'm going to throw out there, which may seem laughable at first, but there is the link to the Niners and to Robert Saleh and to a Super Bowl team, and that's Emmanuel Moseley, who left San Francisco. His last year in San Francisco, remember, he tore his ACL at Carolina a couple weeks before they traded for Christian McCaffrey. Emmanuel Moseley's average annual value the last couple of years with Detroit, $3 million. He's only played 3 games in the last 2 years, an ACL tear with San Francisco and ACL tear with Detroit. And he wound up tearing his pec with the Lions also. I think the summer going into the 2024 season, came back end of the year, played 2 games, one in November, one in December, did not appear in their playoff loss to the Washington Commanders. So of this list, Samuel Farley, and Moseley, injury flyers. A couple younger players in Samuel and Farley, and a player in Moseley who knows Robert Saleh and the system he wants to run. And then 2 more veteran players in Hilton and Douglas. They're going to cost a little bit more. certainly than Farley and Mosley, and possibly more than Samuel as well, but players that may have some inside-outside flexibility. I have no idea if the Niners will sign someone, and if they do, who it's going to be. But my opinion is I'm okay with them bringing in a low to mid-cost signing, because especially if it's someone on the outside, Demo plays his more natural position on the inside. You pair whoever this corner is with Renardo Green on the outside. You don't put so much faith in Upton Stout potentially if he somehow wins the slot cornerback job. And if he wins the job, I mean, that's obviously means he's doing something well and right in training camp and preseason games, but you don't have to bank on a rookie to be essentially one of your 3 starting receivers. Again, now Trey Brown is in the mix. They have someone like a Sear Neal who they signed from the Dolphins to a 2-year deal, who will probably make the roster just due to special teams, but he would be one of your outside corners due to injury, if injury arises. And then who else are you looking at? Jacob Robinson, an undrafted rookie free agent out of BYU. You're looking at Trey Avery, a 2nd or 3rd year player out of Rutgers. You're looking at Darrell Luther, a 3rd year player, a bigger corner, 6'1", 6'2", but hasn't gotten much run recently. The Niners are not one player away, and if they had to field 6, and I think they're going to take 6, there are 6 to choose from. It's not like we only feel good about 4 or 5 corners. I think there are 6 that they feel good about. But would they feel better about an outside free agent than someone that's in the building already? Probably. You can't tell me a healthy Asante Samuel or healthy Mike Hilton or Rasul Douglas is not better than Sear Neal or Darrell Luther or Trey Avery or Jacob Robinson. Upton Stout's not going anywhere, or even a Trey Brown for that matter. But Trey Brown was one of the early signings that they made in free agency when they could have had a Hilton or Douglas or even Samuel. But at that point, Samuel still undergoing, I think, either rehab from his neck surgery. So I think the Niners, I don't want to say should bring someone in, but really could, to more so and absolutely bolster that depth on the outside and inside in the cornerback room. Now let's move to safeties. And this is another one that gets brought up quite a bit. And who's on the roster? So Malik Mustafa is hurt. I know we've seen workout videos. He is not going to start week 1. He will start off on the PUP list, miss the first 4 weeks, and then be activated sometime in October. Otherwise, you have Jair Brown, George Odom, Richie Grant, Marquez Siegel, Jason Pinnock, and Jalen Mahoney. And who folks have been clamoring for: Justin Simmons, formerly with the Broncos, 32 years old. His previous average annual value was about $7.5 million. You are not going to get him for cheap. Julian Blackmon, formerly of the Colts, $3.7 million previous average annual value. Jordan Whitehead of the Bucks, $4.5 million previously. And Marcus May, previously of the Jets, among other teams, maybe your lower cost veteran, about $1.4 million. So to me, I don't think the Niners make a move at safety. I think this is more name driven. What Justin Simmons would cost. I mean, someone like a Julian Blackmon, if you can get him for around from $2 to $3 million on a 1-year deal, I don't think that's a bad signing at all. And if it pushes someone like Jair Brown out of being a starter, I'm okay with that, because Mustafa at some point is going to come back, obviously, right? Jair Brown's going to be on the roster. One of George Odom or Richie Grant, because they have special teams value as well, will be on the roster. Marquez Siegel was drafted in the 5th round out of Kansas State. I don't see him getting cut, but I think Jason Pinnock, and if you've been listening and watching the podcast recently, thank you very much. And if it's your first time, thank you as well. Hopefully we keep you for the long haul. I think Jason Pinnock is the signing that everybody's sleeping on. I think he might be the biggest under the radar signing the 49ers have made free agent wise. 2.5-year starter with the Giants, familiarity with Robert Saleh, his rookie year with the Jets, got released, thought they could sneak him onto the practice squad, claimed by the Giants. Now he was back with San Francisco. So I think between Pinnock and Brown, Odom or Grant, and Marquez Siegel, those are your 4. I think, rookies that are going to make the game day, the week 1 roster. And at some point, Mustafa comes back, and then you have to make a decision who you're going to bounce down. Now, the other thing the Niners can do, they got very comfortable playing or having only 3 safeties on the active roster. And if someone like a Richie Grant or a George Odom or another safety that's out there makes his way onto the practice squad, Jalen Mahoney, second-year player, undrafted rookie free agent out of Vanderbilt, probably one of those players that is on the practice squad, they could call him up twice. They can call another safety up twice to have a 4th on the roster, or if somebody gets hurt, to have a 3rd active safety. The Niners have gotten comfortable with 3 safeties, so that's not out of the realm of possibility either. And with injuries at receiver and suspensions, we're going to get into that momentarily. Who knows how many linemen they're going to take or linebackers. And I have a pretty good idea. We're going to go into that next podcast next week. There is the real possibility that 3 safeties start out on the week 1 roster. I'm not going to say the initial roster because there's finagling that's going to happen. I think that's a good transition now to the offensive roster prediction. But to go back to my safety prediction, I think as is who is on the roster, the Niners, I think, feel comfortable with. Not to say that Justin Simmons wouldn't upgrade the safety room. He would, but at what cost? And again, are the Niners 1 player away? I don't think they are. I think they have a very good roster, but I don't think anyone that's available at corner or safety is going to be that put you over the top piece like, and we'll have to go back 30 plus years, like Dion was to the 94 team that got them past Dallas and beating the Chargers in Super Bowl 29. So my offensive roster prediction, and I started saying a couple minutes ago that this is going to be my week 1 roster prediction, not the initial roster cuts that first week of September, because the Niners did, some, I don't say tricky stuff last year, but remember they only kept 2 tight ends on the roster. Then they wound up adding a 3rd. They wound up releasing a veteran on certain positions and then bringing them back for salary reasons. Lots of roster moves, ins and outs, practice squad signings, etc., will happen those first couple days after final cuts. That'll affect what the actual week 1 roster looks like. My predictions now are going to be for the week 1, quote unquote, final roster going into the 2025 season. So at quarterback, who's on the roster? It's Brock Purdy, Matt Jones, Tanner Mordecai, and Curtis Rourke. This one's easy. Curtis Rourke is going to start off on PUP. He had ACL surgery in January. He will start off on PUP and then transition to IR unless something happens to Tanner Mordecai, who I see making the roster as QB3. Now, Mordecai's roster position to me is so interesting. He was on the practice squad all of last year when the Niners carried Brock, the Pastronaut, and Brandon Allen. But how much, ultimate value is someone like Tanner Mordecai going to give you if Brock and Matt Jones goes down? Now, who knows? He could be the next Brock Purdy. Played a lot of snaps, 5 years between SMU and Wisconsin, over 1,200 snaps that he's taken. There is value in that. Now, there's also common sense as to why he was an undrafted rookie free agent in 2024 that the Niners picked up and was not selected by one of the 32 teams 7+ times. But I think Kyle is still shell-shocked from the NFC Championship game against Philadelphia if they do not have a 3rd quarterback. And remember, the 3rd quarterback's the emergency quarterback. He doesn't count against your game day number. And I think Mordecai will ultimately make the roster. And then next year, it could be a competition between Mordecai and Rourke for QB3. And then ultimately, maybe either one of those players, potentially if it's Curtis Rourke, being the primary backup to Brock Jones in 2027. So Brock Purdy, because Matt Jones is only signed to a 2-year deal. So 3 at quarterback. Running back, who's on the roster? It's McCaffrey, Guerendo, Jordan James, Patrick Taylor, Corey Kiner, and Israel Abanikanda. I think the first 4 I mentioned, McCaffrey, Guerendo, James, the drafted rookie out of Oregon, who's drawn some comparisons to Frank Gore, and Patrick Taylor makes it as the 4 running backs. Corey Kiner and or Israel Abanikanda, I'm excited to see them in the preseason. I'm excited to see Jordan James in the preseason. If Kiner was drafted and James was the undrafted rookie free agent, then Kiner would be making the team. And remember, Israel Abanikanda was signed off the Jets practice squad end of last year, so he's been in the system. Second-year player or third-year player out of Pitt. But I think Kiner and Abanikanda, one, if not both, find their way to the practice squad. And here's why. McCaffrey is what? Going into his 8th year. Guerrero his 2nd. Jordan James a rookie. And Patrick Taylor might be his 4th or 5th. If you bump off Patrick Taylor and bring in, especially someone like Corey Kiner that I know a lot of people are high on, you think Kyle is going to be comfortable with 2 rookies, a second-year running back, and McCaffrey on the roster? God forbid McCaffrey gets hurt. There's no way. And youth shouldn't matter, right? It should be talent. It should be ability to pick up pass protection, which we know Kyle is big on. Vision, being a one-cut runner, showing a little something in the passing game, which Isaac Guerrero showed more than a little something in the passing game in 2024. I was very impressed with him. His vision needs some work, and we know he's fast. He's a big runner, but doesn't run like a thumper. But there's no way Kyle is going to be comfortable, even if it's Israel Abanikanda, because he hasn't played that much, with 3 young running backs and McCaffrey on the roster. I just don't see it, especially when Kiner and or Abanikanda can easily be stashed on the practice squad, regardless of what they show in the preseason. Everybody knows Niner running backs run well in the Shanahan system. Denver running backs ran well in the Mike Shanahan system. So I'm not worried about losing either one of those two. And if they wind up losing both, should they lose both Corey Kiner and Israel Abanikanda, Kyle will find another running back or two to stash onto the practice squad. And if he actually gets elevated to the 53-man roster and sees any significant snaps, he'll perform. Hell, Patrick Taylor went over 100 yards week 18 at Carolina. Isaac Guerrero has had some good showings in spurts, in moments. And Jordan James, we'll see what he's going to do. I think, to me, it's more interesting, will Jordan James even be active on game days? I don't think they're going to have 4 running backs active, probably 3. And my third would be Patrick Taylor, because he's played special teams in the past. Now, with the new special teams coach and system in, maybe it's completely up for grabs, and maybe Jordan James, beats out Patrick Taylor for running back 3. But there's the possibility that Jordan James starts off the season inactive. It doesn't mean he's a bust. It means that what Patrick Taylor brings to the offense, but more specifically special teams, rounds out the game day roster better than what Jordan James could bring at this point as a rookie. Next year, Patrick Taylor probably doesn't get re-signed. It's Jordan James as your number 3, and then maybe someone else, an undrafted rookie free agent or someone, comes in for that number 4 spot. Fullback, Juice, 1, moving on. Tight end, here's who's on the roster. George Kittle, Braden Willis, Luke Farrell, Jake Tonjes, Ross Dwelly, and Mason Pline. And I think there's going to be 3 tight ends on the roster for game 1. And it's going to be George Kittle, Luke Farrell, who they signed from the Jaguars, and Ross Dwelly, who they brought back, who's familiar with Kyle's system. Braden Willis, to me, I think his path to the roster is fullback when Kyle Juszczyk hangs it up. And that might be 2 years from now, because he signed a 2-year deal. So after potentially the 2026 season, Jake Tonjes got some playing time, I think, a bit last year. Could be wrong on that. Could have been a practice squad player all season. But I think he's destined for the practice squad. And Mason Pline, huge second-year player out of Furman, was on the practice squad all last year, 6'7", 260. His measurables are enticing. Wasn't a tremendous blocker coming out of Furman. Not fast, okay hands. Not sure how much seasoning he got on the practice squad. Maybe another year will help him maybe elevate to that tight end 3 role next year. But I think what you're getting in Ross Dwelly is someone who's become a better blocker, but is more of a receiver at this point. Kittle does both extremely well. Luke Farrell, more of a blocker than a receiver. Ross Dwelly, more of a receiver than a blocker. To me, that's a nice balanced mix in the tight end room, with 2 of Braden Willis, Jake Tonjes, and Mason Pline on the practice squad. Now, here's the last 2 positions, offensive line and receiver, where decisions become more difficult, much more judicious, and you have to think about things like injury, suspensions, and really, what's the best mix of O-linemen that, let's start with the O-line that you're going to have. The 5 are penciled into me. It's Trent Williams, of course. It's Ben Barch. If people want to argue that, that's fine, but it's going to be Ben Barch at left guard. Jake Brendel at center. It's penned in Dominic Pooney and Colton McKivitz at right tackle. Those are your 5. Now, here are the bench players. We're going to start off with tackles. You have Austin Pleasance, Andre Dillard, recent free agent signing, and Isaac Alarcon. Interior, your guards, Nick Sakiel, Matt Hennessy, who could play some center, Connor Colby, 7th-round draft pick out of Iowa, Drew Moss, undrafted rookie free agent out of Colorado State, Sebastian Gutierrez, and Zach Johnson. You have Spencer Burford, who can play guard and tackle, and Drake Nugent, who's essentially a center, second-year undrafted rookie free agent out of Michigan. So the Niners are going to, based on the past couple of years, everyone uses the term swing tackle, and that was Jalen Moore last year, who wound up really only playing on the left side because only Trent Williams got hurt. Colton McKivitz didn't get hurt. But I guess he was the first tackle off the bench. Now, it's interesting. If McKivitz wound up getting hurt, would it have been Jalen Moore? Would it have been one of the other tackles, the other tackle that was on the roster at that time? And apologize that I'm forgetting his name. Kyle seems to like to have positional tackles more so than a swing tackle. And I think Spencer Burford, who has played he's played right tackle in a pinch. I think the game that comes to mind in 2024 was the Ravens Christmas night game where the O-line was already missing Trent Williams and the interior got banged up as well. So Spencer Burford had to move outside, but he has experience in college at University of Texas, San Antonio playing tackle. And he's played guard more so, probably 90% of the time, 80 to 90% of his time with San Francisco. So I think out of the tackle options, Austin Pleasance, Andre Dillard, and Isaac Alarcon, I think Austin Pleasance wins the backup left tackle spot behind Trent Williams. Andre Dillard, the more heralded tackle, 1st-round draft pick of the Eagles a couple of years ago, played with the Packers, hasn't really established himself. It's only started maybe a dozen or so, 15-ish games in the league. Now, that's more than Austin Pleasance has started. But Pleasance got some run in addition to another tackle or two when Williams got hurt. And I thought he acquitted himself pretty well. Huge guy, 6'7", 330, biggest offensive lineman, even bigger than Trent on the roster. That itself does not mean that he should be the backup to Trent Williams. But I think being on the team last year, re-signing, now he has no guaranteed money. They can release him, no worries. Like I mentioned, Andre Dillard, only about $300,000 of his 1-point-something million is guaranteed. So if they release him, it's a decent savings as well. But I think Austin Pleasance wins the left tackle spot. And I think Spencer Burford makes the team as the backup right tackle, or you want to call it swing tackle, whatever you want to call it. But he has tackle and guard flexibility. Where I think this is so important for San Francisco is in the past, it's been 2 players who can exclusively only play on the inside and 2 players who could exclusively only play on the outside. This year with the backups, Pleasance backing up left tackle behind Trent Williams, Spencer Burford penciled into behind Colton McKivitz, but could also play inside at left guard or right guard or left tackle as well. That kind of versatility is what keeps you on a roster when you are not a starter. So Dillard and Isaac Alarcon gone. Austin Pleasance and Spencer Burford winds up being offensive linemen 6 and 7. Not ranked, but after the top 5. At guard, between Nick Sakiel, Matt Hennessy, Connor Colby, Drew Moss, Sebastian Gutierrez, and Zach Johnson, and Drake Nugent, I think the nod goes to Matt Hennessy, who can play guard and center. He was signed from the Falcons practice squad end of last year to a 2-year deal. Not much guaranteed money this year. It's not we got to keep him because he's an X amount of money dead cap hit. That's not what it's about. Versatility again, can play center if Brendel gets hurt, can slide over to guard if need be. And I think as much as the Niners, like Nick Sakiel and have had him on the roster in the past, I think they give the nod to Connor Colby I'm not going to say talent-wise they're comparable. Nick Sakiel is probably a bit more ahead of him, but Colby doesn't have to be pressed into action, right? If something happens at one of the guard spots, Hennessy or Spencer Burford can slide in for that, right? So he could be the last man up. He could be literally offensive lineman number 9, because I think the Niners would keep 9 on the 53-man roster. But it's a lineman that you have under your control for 4 years, even though he's a 7th-round pick, right? There should be nothing wildly expected of Connor Colby. And hell, between Connor Colby and Drew Moss out of Colorado State, if Moss makes the team, and he had one of the best Pro Football Focus zone run block rankings last year in college football, I wouldn't be shocked. A 7th-round pick versus an undrafted rookie free agent. Undrafted rookie free agents actually wind up getting more guaranteed money than 7th-round picks do. So there's, at least in this first year, that undrafted rookie free agent will be playing. So it's a coin flip. And I think one of the young guards is going to get in there. Matt Hennessy, again, signed to a 2-year contract, to me for a reason, plus versatility. So you have a tackle that can play guard tackle. You have a guard who could play center guard in Hennessy. And you have a young guard. To me, it'll be Connor Colby. Iowa is tight end U, but it's also O-line U as well. He got coached up really well there. I think winds up making essentially as offensive lineman number 9. And then I can see an Andre Dillard making the practice squad as one of the 6 veteran offensive linemen. I could see a Nick Sakiel potentially going there. I can see a Drew Moss potentially going there as well. So your 9 offensive linemen: Trent Williams, Ben Barch, Jake Brendel, Dominic Pooney, Colton McKivitz, Austin Pleasance, Matt Hennessy, Connor Colby, and Spencer Burford. And last but certainly not least, wide receivers. And I think they are going to have 6 on the week 1 game day 53-man roster. And I make this projection with both Brandon Ayuk and Robinson, who they signed from the Rams, to not be on the week 1 roster. Ayuk will start out on PUP, out for the first 4 weeks. He'll be available sometime in October. Robinson the suspension still hasn't come down yet from the NFL for DUI. I'm anticipating a 3-week suspension back in week 4. There's the possibility for weeks 1 through 3, the Niners have 5 receivers on their roster, but I'm going to go with 6 because that's what I think they're ultimately going to wind up having once they're into October anyway. Who's on the roster I think that are locks? Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, and Jordan Watkins, 5th-round rookie out of Ole Miss. Those are your locks. Who else is on the roster? Jacob Cowing, Isaiah Hodgins, Russell Gage, Junior Bergen, the rookie 7th-round pick out of Montana, Malik Knowles, Isaiah Nair, and Tariq Owens. I think the 3 additional receivers to get us to 6, to join Juwan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, and Jordan Watkins, Jacob Cowing, putting in the work his 2nd year. I mean, anytime you see that on Twitter, quarterback, receiver, running back, they're putting in the work. Well, no shit, it's their job. Why don't we film them sitting on the couch, eating a pizza and watching TV, and then say, look at this guy's not putting in the work? It's their fucking jobs, man. Especially young players. I mean, even veterans, superstars want to refine their craft, take the next step, become elite. I don't buy into this. Look at this one pass. This tight spiral someone threw in OTAs. This team's going to be a problem. Nonsense. But I think Jacob Cowing will take the next step. He didn't really take many steps other than being a punt returner and falling down a handful of times. But I think he will make the week 153. I think a veteran is needed because you don't have Ayuk. You don't have Demarcus Robinson. Yes, Juwan Jennings going into his 6th or 7th year. Ricky Pearsall's in his 2nd year. Jordan Watkins is a rookie. Jacob Cowing's in his 2nd year. They need another veteran. Kyle Shanahan is more comfortable with veteran receivers than younger receivers. To me, Isaiah Hodgins, formerly of the Giants, gets the nod over Russell Gage. He will be receiver 4 or 5. I'm not looking at a depth chart right now, but on my listing, Jennings, Pearsall, Watkins 3, Cowings 4, Hodgins 5. And I think because of the emphasis put on special teams with a new coach, a new long snapper, a new punter, Jake Moody having some competition here with Greg Joseph. I think rookie 7th round pick Junior Bergen gets the nod as the punt and kick returner. Now that's interesting though, because if he gets the nod as receiver 6, I don't know if they're going to start 6 receivers every week. So someone, maybe a Jordan Watkins or a Jacob Cowan, like someone's going to have to be inactivated, right? Deactivated. If Bergen makes the roster, he doesn't make the roster to not put him out there on special teams. It doesn't make sense unless his special team showing is completely abysmal. Now, he was not drafted in the 3rd or 4th or 5th round where he's, at risk of getting cut. He was a 7th round pick. The Niners' last pick, one of the last 5 picks in the draft. He could easily get cut. And when Ayuk or Robinson comes back, I can see Hodgins getting released and being brought onto the practice squad. When Ayuk comes back, maybe then it is Junior Bergen, if he's not separating himself in a crazy manner as the returner, that gets released. Or it could be someone in another position, although I don't think the Niners will really ever have 7 receivers on their 53-man roster. So I think until Ayuk and Robinson come back, it's going to be Jennings and Pearsall as your starters. I think your big slot's going to wind up being Isaiah Hodgins. Then you're going to have Jacob Cowan get some run. Then Jordan Watkins, probably your receiver 5, and Jordan Bergen, receiver 6, but probably will be active on game days if he makes the active roster because of his value, if it shows out in training camp and preseason games as a punt and kick returner. So that concludes the podcast for today. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your listening routine. Next podcast will be next week, just as training camp is going to start. We're going to be going over some position groups on the offense that the Niners could potentially make a move like I did with cornerbacks and safeties here. Then we're going to go through the defense, my week 1 53-man roster prediction, part 2 for defense and special teams. You won't want to miss it. Not like I have a crystal ball, but feeling at least right now, before we're into training camp, before there are injuries, before anything else happens transaction-wise, feeling pretty decent about my selections to make the team, but a lot can happen between beginning of July and beginning of September. That's 2 whole months. So the roster deck is going to be shuffled quite a bit, I'm sure, between now and then. But between now and when we speak again, whatever you are doing, stay happy, healthy, and safe. We will talk soon. Take care.